Flintlock Musket. Flintlock muskets were pivotal weapons during the American Revolutionary War, embodying the era's technological advancements in firearms. They operated on a simple yet effective mechanism. A piece of flint held in the hammer struck against a steel plate, creating a spark that ignited the priming powder in the pan. This ignition then fired the main charge of powder in the barrel, propelling the musket ball forward. Standard issue for both British and Continental troops. Such muskets, like the Brown Bess for the British and the Charleville for the French, were muzzle-loaded, smooth-bore firearms. Their design allowed for relatively quick reloading compared to earlier matchlock or wheelock mechanisms, making them suitable for mass infantry tactics. Muskets were effective at medium range but lacked accuracy compared to rifles due to their smooth bores. Flintlock muskets played a crucial role in battles such as Lexington and Concord, Bunker Hill, and Yorktown, where they were used en masse to deliver volley fire, often deciding the outcomes of engagements through their sheer volume and battlefield discipline they required. Their reliability, relative ease of use, and widespread adoption marked a significant advancement in military technology during the late 18th century. Bayonet. The bayonet is a blade that attaches to the muzzle of a musket or rifle, transforming the firearm into a spear-like weapon for close combat. During the American Revolutionary War, the bayonet was a critical tool for infantry soldiers on both sides. Typically, bayonets were made of steel and ranged from 12 to 18 inches in length. The most common design was the socket bayonet, which featured a triangular blade and a socket that fit over the muzzle of the musket. This design allowed soldiers to quickly fix or remove the bayonet as needed. The bayonet's primary function was to provide soldiers with a means of defense and attack when combat moved to close quarters, where reloading firearms was impractical. In these situations, troops would engage in bayonet charges, attempting to break enemy lines through direct assault. The psychological impact of a bayonet charge could be significant, often causing enemy forces to retreat or surrender. Bayonets also served practical purposes beyond combat, such as cutting brush or as makeshift tools. Their simplicity and dual-use nature made them indispensable in the field. The presence of a bayonet thus extended the versatility of the musket, making it an essential component of an 18th-century soldier's arsenal. Cannon. Cannons were a crucial component of warfare during the American Revolutionary War, providing both sides with formidable firepower. These artillery pieces varied in size and design, serving distinct purposes on the battlefield. Field cannons were the most common type used in open battles. They were relatively mobile and could be repositioned as needed, typically firing solid shot. These cannons inflicted significant damage on enemy troops and fortifications. Siege cannons were larger and less mobile, used primarily during prolonged assaults on fortified positions. They fired heavier projectiles capable of breaching walls and fortifications, contributing to the effectiveness of sieges. Howitzers and mortars offered additional flexibility. Howitzers had shorter barrels and could fire shells in a higher trajectory, ideal for striking targets behind cover. Mortars, even shorter and more curved in trajectory, lobbed explosive shells over walls and into trenches. Cannon crews required extensive training to operate these weapons effectively, managing tasks such as loading, aiming, and firing. The presence of cannons on the battlefield significantly influenced tactics, forcing armies to adopt new strategies to counter their destructive potential. Tomahawk. Tomahawks were versatile, single-handed axes used primarily by Native American tribes and later adopted by European settlers and soldiers during the American Revolutionary War. Originally used as tools for hunting and daily tasks, tomahawks became effective weapons in close combat due to their design and ease of use. The typical tomahawk featured a wooden handle with a metal head, which often had a straight or slightly curved edge. The head could be used for chopping or as a blunt weapon. Some tomahawks had a spike or hammer on the opposite side of the blade, enhancing their utility in battle. In combat, tomahawks were favored for their balance, allowing them to be thrown accurately over short distances. This capability made them a practical weapon for both offensive and defensive engagements. Native American warriors, renowned for their skill and agility, effectively utilized tomahawks in guerrilla warfare tactics, striking swiftly and retreating. European settlers and soldiers recognized the Tomahawk's effectiveness and incorporated it into their arsenal, particularly in the frontier regions. Its dual role as a tool and weapon made the Tomahawk an indispensable item in the 18th century North American warfare context. Kentucky Long Rifle. The Kentucky Long Rifle, also known as the Pennsylvania Rifle, was a significant weapon during the American Revolutionary War, renowned for its accuracy and range. Developed in the early 18th century by German gunsmiths in Pennsylvania, it featured a long barrel, typically 36 to 48 inches, which provided greater accuracy and stability. The rifled barrel, with its spiral grooves, imparted a spin to the bullet, stabilizing it in flight and allowing for precise shots at distances up to 300 yards, far exceeding the effective range of the smoothbore muskets used by British troops. American sharpshooters and militias favored the Kentucky Long Rifle for its ability to hit targets from a distance, making it ideal for guerrilla tactics and skirmishes. These rifles played a crucial role in key battles and engagements, allowing American forces to harass and disrupt British movements. Despite its slower reload time compared to muskets, its accuracy provided a strategic advantage in the rugged and varied terrains of the colonies, contributing significantly to the American fight for independence. Swivel Gun. Swivel guns were small, versatile cannons used extensively during the American Revolutionary War. Typically mounted on swivels or pivots, these guns could rotate horizontally and vertically, providing a wide range of fire. They were commonly found on ships, fortifications, and sometimes on wheeled carriages for mobility. The swivel gun fired grape shot, small cannon balls, or a variety of improvised projectiles, making it highly effective against personnel and lightly armored targets. Its barrel length ranged from 2 to 4 feet, and it had a bore diameter of around 1 to 2 inches. These dimensions made the swivel gun relatively easy to maneuver compared to larger artillery pieces. Swivel guns were advantageous in naval warfare, providing ships with the ability to repel boarding parties and protect vital areas. On land, they fortified defensive positions, offering rapid, localized firepower. Their versatility and ease of use made them an essential component in the arsenal of both the Continental Army and British forces, serving as a critical tool in both offensive and defensive operations during the Revolutionary War. Mortar. Mortars used during the American Revolutionary War were short, stout artillery pieces designed to fire explosive shells in a high-arcing trajectory. Unlike cannons, which fired directly at targets, mortars were used to lob projectiles over walls, fortifications, and other obstacles. Their primary role was to deliver explosive shells, known as bombs or grenades, into enemy positions, causing significant damage and chaos. The design of a mortar included a short barrel set at a steep angle, often 45 degrees or more, mounted on a robust base to absorb the recoil. This steep angle allowed mortars to fire at high angles, making them ideal for siege warfare where they could target areas behind fortifications that direct fire artillery could not reach. Mortars varied in size, with smaller ones being more portable and larger ones requiring significant effort to transport and set up. Despite their limited range compared to cannons, mortars were effective in disrupting enemy formations, damaging structures, and demoralizing troops. Their ability to fire explosive shells made them a valuable asset in both offensive and defensive operations during the Revolutionary War. Grenades. During the American Revolutionary War, grenades were relatively primitive compared to modern standards. These early grenades were small, spherical iron or glass containers filled with gunpowder and fitted with a fuse. The design was akin to a small cannonball, but with a hollow interior to hold the explosive material. To use a grenade, the soldier would light the fuse, usually made of slow-burning material, and then quickly throw the grenade towards the enemy before it detonated. The intention was for the grenade to explode upon reaching the target, causing fragmentation and blast damage to enemy troops. Grenades were particularly useful in trench warfare, sieges, and fortifications, where they could be lobbed over walls or into enemy positions to disrupt and injure soldiers. However, their use required skill and timing, as mishandling could lead to premature explosions, posing a danger to the thrower. due to their unpredictability and the relative scarcity of materials. Grenades were not as widely used as other weapons like muskets and cannons. They represented the early stages of explosive ordnance development, which would become more sophisticated in later conflicts. Swords. In the American Revolutionary War, swords were essential weapons for officers, cavalry, and sometimes infantry. They served both practical and symbolic roles on the battlefield. Types of swords. Officer swords. Often ornate, these swords were symbols of rank and status. They were typically straight-bladed and used more for commanding troops than actual combat. Cavalry sabers. Curved and designed for slashing, sabers were used by mounted troops. Their shape allowed for effective strikes from horseback, combining reach and cutting power. Infantry swords. Less common, these were sometimes used by non-commissioned officers or as secondary weapons. They were shorter and more robust, suitable for close combat. Uses in battle. Close combat. In the chaos of battle, swords were effective in hand-to-hand fighting, especially when firearms were impractical or had misfired. Ceremonial and command. Officers often used swords to signal movements and commands to their troops, making them crucial for maintaining order and coordination during engagements. Swords, though less dominant than firearms, played a critical role in the Revolutionary War, blending functionality with the authority needed to lead and inspire troops. Pike. Pikes were polearm weapons used prominently during the 17th and early 18th centuries, including during the American Revolutionary War. They typically consisted of a long wooden shaft, often measuring around 15 feet in length, tipped with a steel spearhead. Pikes were primarily used by infantry formations to fend off cavalry charges and to engage in close combat with enemy infantry. In the context of the American Revolutionary War, pikes were employed by both Continental and British forces, albeit to a limited extent compared to firearms and artillery. They provided a defensive barrier against cavalry assaults and were also used defensively in disciplined formations to push back enemy infantry or to protect artillery positions. However, by this period, pikes were gradually becoming obsolete due to advancements in firearms and changes in battlefield tactics favoring more mobile and versatile infantry formations. Despite their decreasing practicality on the battlefield, pikes represented a transitional phase in military technology, bridging the gap between ancient melee weapons and modern firearms, showcasing the evolution of infantry tactics during the era of the American Revolution. Artillery pieces. Artillery pieces in the context of the American Revolutionary War were crucial in shaping battlefield tactics and strategies. Cannons were the backbone of artillery, ranging from smaller field guns used for direct fire against infantry and cavalry to larger siege cannons employed for breaching fortifications. Howitzers provided indirect fire with high arcing trajectories, useful for targeting troops behind cover or within fortifications. Mortars, with their ability to lob explosive shells over walls, played a vital role in siege warfare, breaking the morale of defenders by creating chaos and destruction within fortified positions. Artillery crews were highly trained to quickly load and fire these weapons, coordinating with infantry and cavalry to maximize their effectiveness. The sound and sight of cannons firing were intimidating, capable of causing significant casualties and disrupting enemy formations. During battles like Yorktown and Saratoga, artillery played decisive roles in securing victories for both sides, demonstrating its pivotal importance in late 18th century warfare. The development and deployment of these artillery pieces marked a significant evolution in military technology and tactics, influencing warfare for decades to come.